Team Fantasy Outlook time. Let's get it. Welcome in, everybody. Today, we're going to be diving deep into the Fantasy Football Outlook for the 2022 Washington Commanders. The Commanders are switching up their quarterback in hopes of making a run for the 2022 title for the division. As we look at last year's standings, the Commanders finished 2021 as the number 3 team in their division. They finished behind the Cowboys and Eagles at 7-10-0. This year, they look to improve their record and ultimately be division champs. This year in the draft, the Washington Commanders took 4 players who I believe could be fantasy relevant in 2022. Jahan Dotson is the wide receiver out of Penn State who looks to be the prize out of the rookie haul. Dotson will likely be playing on the opposite side of Terry McLaurin and will try to make a name for himself. Dotson has some shifty route running ability which should help him open up some catching opportunities. It's just whether or not he can build a strong enough rapport with Wentz to siphon some of that target share away from McLaurin in 2022. Brian Robinson Jr. is a running back out of Alabama that should be used sparingly around 4 to 5 carries a game. He is someone to keep an eye on if Antonio Gibson gets hurt. Right now, the third down back is J.D. McKissic, so the only time that you're really going to see Robinson would be a handful of carries per game at most, even with head coach Ron Rivera saying that he hopes Robinson and Gibson could be a 1-2 punch like he had in Carolina with Jonathan Stewart and DeAngelo Williams. If Gibson shows any sign of injury, go in and swoop up Robinson quickly. Until then, I believe he should stay off of your roster. Next, we're going to talk about Sam Howell, the quarterback out of North Carolina. He is currently the number 3 quarterback in the depth chart. He's right now behind Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke. The only way he would be even relevant in 2022 is if, number 1, Wentz has an awful start to the season, and the Commanders just want to start fresh with a rookie at quarterback and place him ahead of Heineke. Other than that situation, Howell will not touch the field in 2022. Lastly, let's go over Cole Turner, the tight end out of Nevada. He is a 6'6" guy who doesn't really particularly grade well compared to the others in this class. He sits behind an injury-plagued Logan Thomas, but even if given the starting nod due to those injuries, I'm not sure you're going to be happy with his fantasy output that he gives you. Nothing really special that I can see about Turner. He was just a tight end that was taken in the 5th round of the draft, so I needed to mention him in this video. Now, I'm done mentioning him, so just stay away in 2022. Now let's look at an overview of the fantasy targets for the Commanders for the 22 season. We are going to break this down into 3 categories. The first category is studs. These are players that you can easily plug and play regardless of matchups. Studs can win you weeks even against difficult defenses. The next category is starters. These are players that you will start almost every week, except there could be a few weeks where matchups can dictate whether you start them or not. The last category we'll talk about is the flex. These are players that you can plug into your flex position and they have a chance to have a fantasy relevant game, but cannot be counted on every week due to inconsistency. In the stud category, we don't have anybody. Now, in the starters category, let's go ahead and look at Antonio Gibson and wide receiver Terry McLaurin. In the flex category, we're going to look at Logan Thomas, quarterback Carson Wentz, wide receiver Jahan Dotson, wide receiver Curtis Samuel, and running back J.D. McKissic. Now let's dive into each one of those fantasy football targets for the 22 season. First up, we have Antonio Gibson. Gibson was the number 10 running back last season. Gibson was a nice player to have on your starting roster as he was pretty consistent throughout the season. He did produce a couple of what the heck kind of games, but overall, fantasy owners should have been happy with his production. Having Carson Wentz at quarterback should help Gibson be in the red zone more, which could raise his value a little bit. See, having 3rd round rookie Robinson in the wings is something I wouldn't really be too afraid of, even with the head coach giving the rookie some praise early on. Next on the list, we have Terry McLaurin. McLaurin finished as the wide receiver number 25 last season, and he was a very good player overall for fantasy, even with that not-so-good quarterback play. Now, with Carson Wentz coming over to the team, McLaurin could be hyper-targeted by Wentz, and he could easily become a top 15 receiver in 2022. Now let's go over the tight end who finished number 14 last season in Logan Thomas. Thomas is a tight end that can provide tons of value as he's being drafted currently at the end of drafts. Thomas had torn his left ACL last season and ended up missing a total of 11 games. When on the field, Thomas is one of the main targets in this offense. Be on the lookout for his recovery process throughout the offseason, and you may be able to find a nice gem at tight end towards the end of the draft. Next, we can now talk about the number 14 quarterback last season in Carson Wentz. Wentz was traded from the Indianapolis Colts and should provide that veteran leadership the Commanders need. Wentz should immediately become the starter for the Commanders and help produce some nice fantasy production within this offense. Carson Wentz is virtually going undrafted right now, but could provide some surprising value in deeper leagues. I'd say draft Wentz and have confidence that he can get the job done on a weekly basis in 2022 if needed. Now we're on to talk about the number 179th wide receiver from last season in Curtis Samuel. Samuel only played in 5 games last season and was a non-factor in those games that he played in. He looks to stay healthy this season and become a very good slot receiver for the Commanders. Curtis Samuel is virtually being undrafted and could develop into a diamond in the rough if he can stay on the field and produce some good numbers. Feel good in taking a shot at him at the very end of your draft. Now lastly, we're going to talk about the number 37 running back from last season in J.D. McKissic. McKissic is the definition of a PPR running back. He comes in on third down, he provides nice receiving opportunity for the offense, and then he's subbed out back for GIBSON to handle the early downs and the goal line carries. McKissic is a good flex option for you to plug in and play a few times in a season, but not somebody that you really want to depend on as a weekly start. Thank you as always for watching the videos as we continue on our journey through all the fantasy team outlooks throughout the offseason to better prepare you for your draft so you can dominate your leagues. I can't wait to see you on the next video. We'll see you guys next time.